Gopijana Vallabha Givaradari Yasodanandana Yasodanandana Nirvasyatam Ashu Pura Vasana
Kainam Aprovajivamajimam Tasya Santam Yad Balinaya Pushta Tasmin Pratipa Parikritya Aste Nirvasitam Ashu Purachvasana Kainam Atrovajivamajimam Dasya Sutam Yad balinaiva pushta tasmin pratipa parikrichaste nirvasitam ashupurashvasana.
Kaenam atropayuhavajimam Tasya sutanya bali naiva pushta Tasmi pratipa parakrityaste Nirvasyatana supurashvasana
Kaenam atropajuhavajimam Tasya sutam yad balinaiva pushta Tasmin pratipa parakritya aste Nirvasyatam ashupurachvasana
Kaenam atropajuhavajimam Dasya sutam yad balinaiva pushta Tasmin pratipa parakrityaste Nirvasitam ashupurachvasana
Ka Hu Enam This Atra Here Upajuhava Call for Jimam Crooked Dasya Kavicandra mistress Sutam Son Yat whose Balina by whose subsistence Eva certainly Pushta grown up Tasmin unto him Pratipa enmity Parikritya enemy's interest Aste situated Nirvasitam get him out Ashu immediately Purat from the palace Svasana let him breathe on Translation This is our good friend Duryodhana. Who asked him to come here, this son of the kept mistress? He is so crooked that he spies the interests of the enemy against those by whose support he is grown up. Toss him out of the palace and meet him with only his breath. Purport by Divine Grace, A.C. Kavicandra Swami. When getting married, the Kshatriya kings would take on several other youthful girls along with the married princes. These girl attendants of the king were known as dasis, or attendant mistresses. By the intimate association of the king, they would get sons. Such sons were called dasis. They had no claim to the royal position, but they would get maintenance and other facilities just like princes. Vidura was the son of such a dasi, and he was thus not counted amongst the Kshatriyas. King Dhritarashtra was very affectionate toward his younger dasi brother, Vidura. Vidura was a great friend and philosophical advisor to Dhritarashtra. Duryodhana knew very well that Vidura was a great soul But unfortunately, he used strong words to hurt his innocent uncle. Duryodhana not only attacked Vidura's birth, but called him an infidel because he seemed to support the cause of Yudhishthira. When Duryodhana considered his enemy, he desired that Vidura be immediately put out of the palace and deprived of all his possessions. If possible, he would have liked to be caned until he was left with nothing but his breath. He charged that Vidura was a spy of the Pandavas because he advised King Dhritarashtra in their favor. Such is the situation of palace life and the intricacies of diplomacy that even a faultless person like Vidura could be charged with something abominable and punished. Vidura was struck with wonder at such unexpected behavior from his nephew Duryodhana, and therefore, before anything actually happened, he decided to leave the palace for good. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Shakaya Chaksuramilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishna Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschata Desikari Namo Mahavanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gora Trishe Namaha. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Vidapate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta Kanta Namaste, Sakti Kanchana Gauranga, Radhe Vrindavan, Ishri, Vishabhanu, Sudev Devi, Pranamami Devi. What city do you channel?
ISKCON NYC.
So I was thinking, there's the caste, people cast around, are so concerned about birth, parents. You see here, Dhritarashtra is the son of Vyasdev, incarnation of Krishna. But he's not so good. He's especially that because he knows, Krishna is supreme and everything, but he doesn't care. He only cares about everybody wants. So Duryodhana is also coming in another family, but he's so bad that when he was born, Vidura, when they were noting all the auspicious signs surrounding him, Vidura said they should kill him right away as a baby, instead of ruin everything. And Dhritarashtra was too attached, even though he had 99 sons. So that's his first one. So these things go on. And Prahlad is coming into the family with his demon, and he's the greatest devotee, so we never know. And we're coming from all kinds of backgrounds. And Bhagavad explained that we're kind of sending devotees to take birth in all kinds of families and all kinds of countries and everything, so that they can preach to everybody. Because if all the devotees were only Yathas, Brahmanas, and such, nobody could join them, take it up. But it's not the real. Once you got proud of his body now, we heard yesterday, and they said for a long time, his pride Some people have gone so crazy they can't even identify whether they're a man or a woman or undecided. They can't even know. So it's a very insane situation going on here. So Vidura is actually a Namaraj. So he's a great demigod. Of course, they don't know that, but they're just thinking that he's a, they forget, they don't even think that he's the son of Vyasdeva. He's the son of the maidservant. But the maidservant is a very good girl, very submissive. That's why Vidura came off so nice. The princesses got scared of Vyasdeva, and actually, when Satyavati asked Vyasdeva to do this, he told her this is not a good time because he was in the middle of some really severe tapasya and he looked really bad. Long beard and hair and skinny. Didn't look very good because he was in very austere conditions. It's better at the time. But she said, no, it's an emergency. You have to do it right now. So the first one closed her eyes, and she was panicking, and she made her husband run line, and out of it. She turned white in shock or something. So Pandu was very white. And then the second try, she put the maidservant because she didn't want it. But the maidservant was very submissive and nice. So they had to do it, they were the same person. And he was actually being rushed to life to it. And he would take advice, but he never didn't want to follow his advice. But kings are supposed to be guided by Brahmins. Vidura is, throughout, he was a spy for the Pandavas, fortunately. Like when they made that plot to burn him up, send him away and go to a nice place, but it was meant to start on fire. But Vidura knew about that, and he gave a message to Yudhishthira, and he sent a miner, and the miner dug a tunnel so that when the fire started, they could get out. And everybody thought they were dead, so everybody crying was Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana, they were crying, they were happy, they were pretending to be unhappy. But Vidura seemed undisturbed because he knew they were alive. People thought it was because he was saint character, and he's above all this anxiety about birth and death. So, not a ordinary person. And he, of course, he favored the Pandavas because Yudhishthira was the rightful king, the next king, by he was the oldest descendant of the previous died. So he was the rightful king. They were all too young to take the throne, and somehow Dhritarashtra got in the position, and Pandu went away. Duryodhana was insulting him so bad. Normally, of course, it's being the son of the Dasi Putras. Considered some kind of a low bird. In the history of the Bhagavatam, there are many that were great personalities. But Krishna says, Guna karma vibhavasya. He doesn't say jnana. How you judge them by their qualities and their work, their activities. Regardless of the births of Srila Prabhupada had that vision. Kirata Gnana Purina Pukasha Abhirayana Pukasha Kashaya. He didn't discriminate numerous and believers. So therefore he could go all over the world and he could preach and he could take devotees from all these different classes of so-called uncivilized and low-class people. They would be rejected by the so-called Vedic caste system, whatever it is, because that is not the real system. It's not by birth, by the country someone's come from, where they are, none of those things. The Prabhupada, he didn't take note of any of that. So he saw only the soul that was separated from Krishna, and he connected to Krishna. Anyone who matched the Prabhupada would feel that. He saw it through, and fortunately for us, we have to try for that. Actually, the voice once said, he said, Prabhupada, if we were pure, then everybody would take a book. Prabhupada said, first he said, we're getting purified by distributing books. Prabhupada said, you're already purified. Otherwise, why would you distribute books? Why would you try to give these crazy people a book about Krishna if you didn't have some understanding that they're not the body, even though we may get bewildered by the bodies. We know this is the spirit soul, this is part and parcel of Krishna. And the more everybody's aware of that, people respond. Because they want to know who they are. Everybody is lost now. I don't know all of them, but they have something like 30 gender definitions on besides man.
30.
Huh?
30.
Something like that. And the last two forms I said, undefined, non-binary. They have fluid, that means you go back and forth. Even more, you think I'm a monkey or a dog. What I really am, I really identify with. So they need to be educated, and we have education. So we don't want to be like Duryodhana. He's quite vicious, but very unhappy. He was never happy. He was so envious. When he wanted to make the dice game the second time, and even Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra told him, you have already more than you used to. You have a bigger kingdom, you have all this power, you have everything. Why? What you don't need anything. What is the problem? He just said, I can't tolerate to see Yudhishthira having any amount of happiness. He couldn't tolerate so envious. So he wanted Yudhishthira annihilated. So he made the cheating dice game. We heard about that on Saturday. And Shakuni played, really played. Shakuni was the master. He had some mystic power. So he would throw and say, I won. No matter what the dice said, everybody gets to have he won. You can see it's different. So he just didn't have a chance. And the Kshatriya people, when that went through that in Africans, they were saying, why don't you say, the Kshatriyas, if they're challenged to fight or gambling, they have to take it. Otherwise they'll be humiliated and called cowards. So we used to drink it. And you understood this. Whatever happens to be the will of the Lord. And Krishna had arranged to be with the at the time. He had been there all along, but then Shalva was Dwarka and Krishna went to fight with him, so he wasn't there. When Krishna met Krishna there, he said, I would have stopped it, I would have preached all bad family names, and I wouldn't let it happen. But it's too late now. But it all turned out recognized that he's the brother of his father, and he's the son of the estate. So, it's a very exalted man of the mother. The mother of Sukadeva was also some demigoddess of this whole time, another son of the estate. So his brother of Sukadeva, no recognition right there. So we can learn from Duryodhana. The enemy was not very nice, not attractive at all. But he was intelligent, he was a good king, manager. People were happy. They were not happy when Yudhishthira left, but he pacified everyone by giving lots of gifts. And, the kingdom was run very smoothly, there were no enemies, and everybody, had a lot of opulence. So they gradually forgot, although they all favored Yudhishthira. So we just go on today as the appearance day, the disappearance of Vakrishwar Pandit. Everybody knows him. He's the fifth branch of the Chaitanya tree, so very, very important person. What's he famous for?
Dancing.
Singing and dancing. So they asked Chaitanya for 1,000 hours or something, they could play the kirtan for 72 hours and he could dance for 72 hours. That's what he wanted to do. But the story is connected really with this Devananda Pandit. Devananda Pandit is now a great devotee, he's not our father. But he was a Bhagavad reciter, he wasn't a devotee. And he was reciting the Bhagavatam Navadvip, and Srivas Thakur walked past him, and he heard the Bhagavatam, he went inside. And while he was listening, he went in ecstasy, he fell on the ground. So that the students of Devananda thought he's making a disturbance in the place here, so they just threw him out. And Devananda didn't interfere with him. So that was very offensive. So one day when Chaitanya was going by his place, and he just started shouting, "You rascal," shouting, "You teaching, you reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, you don't understand what word is Srimad Bhagavatam, you're absolutely no good person," on and on again, very angry. But then sometime Devananda saw at some program Vakrishwar singing and dancing for like 6 hours. And he was very impressed. And he got attached to Vakrishwar. And he started to hang out with him. Because Vakrishwar would dance in ecstasy, sometimes he'd fall backwards. So he would stay behind him to catch him. And when he'd fall on the ground, he would clean up all the dust and wipe the tears off his face. So he became, spent a lot of time with him. I imagine he heard him preaching also. So he got purified. He became Christ. So later he met with Chaitanya again. And that he was in a very humble state of mind. And he said, "What is it Srimad Bhagavatam all about?" Even though he was famous Bhagavatam reciter, many students, but not a devotee. And there's a lot of scholars like that now. And better to be a devotee and not know so much than to be know a lot and not be a devotee. But Chaitanya said the Bhagavatam is only bhakti, nothing else, only bhakti. And anyone who keeps the Bhagavatam in their house, nothing inauspicious can ever happen in their house. Therefore, we try to put it in everybody's house. Probably the first of that about the Krishna book should be in everybody's house. And make it really, that was about the time we had. Now we have about the sets, so it's great. But I campaign going on to is spiritual, and even if you don't read it, you're going to get a lot of benefit from it, just from the vibration, and especially the hippie time. And actually, I heard in Israel, the Kabbalah rabbi, he was quite nice, and he had their book, Torah, and the Torah is a Kabbalah, a big book. And somebody, rich person, printed it and gave him away the sets to everybody. Anyone who would take them. And at first they had it was in an Aramaic language. And he said it doesn't matter, you can't read this language, but the book is, it'll still feel for your house. Just by having it. And I was thinking, yeah, I used to say that all the time. And I was in Greece, and I was talking to one nice boy, and he said, well, I'm just telling you, I don't read it, I don't read books. And I told him that, and he said, that's all right, this book, even if you don't read it, it's beneficial as a spiritual shanti. And he said, okay. And in my experience, regularly to take a look, generally if you have something in front of you all the time, you can eventually know what is this. So, that's the thing. So, Bhakti by his ecstatic dancing, so that we should learn from that. Dancing and chanting is attractive to everybody. I was just reading Yarguni's book, and he bought the first cars for the temple. One for Prabhupada and one for the temple. He said he went to the Jewish car sale with his friend, because he was Jewish and was a brother. And the guy said, I love you guys, I love the way you sing and dance. You see them out in the harmony. So, he gave him a good deal on the cars, he gave him a good credit, payment system, so they can sell the incense and pay for the cars. From the car, so Barbara Shah was especially known for his singing and dancing. There was one program where Chaitanya was saying while Barbara Shah was dancing. And one program we did actually dance for 72 hours. And he asked for 10,000 in Harvard. He would be very happy. And when Chaitanya said, I have one wing like you only. If I had another one, this is all from Chaitanya Chaitanya. In the Gorgon and Topeka, it says he's an incarnation of Aniruddha. Aniruddha from the chapter of Samkrishna, Arjuna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva. And sometimes there were monasteries for I don't know who's who. But that's a very exalted Aniruddha, it's the Lord of the mind. We have many disciples. He's from Orissa. One of his disciples is Gopal Guru. Gopal Guru is very famous. Lord Chaitanya named him Gopal Guru because he preached to Lord Chaitanya one time. He chanted him that way. So anyone who remembers him will purify the entire creation. So try to remember him today. Purify the entire creation. He's the embodiment of Krishna Prema. And his dancing would charm you and the demigods and the demons. We all know dancing is really a charm. he was so envious. He knew where the father was gathering all the time. And he was thinking he wanted to make it more visible. So we got, everybody together and wine and chariots and service. And we went by one lake and we went to the same place. And we were thinking it was fun to see them enjoying all this happiness. But Arjuna's friend, the king of Gandharva, he caught on to that. So Gandharvas were there. So when the Gurus came and he wanted to go to the lake to fast, and Gandharva said, no, you can't come here. So they tried to fight, and they were terribly defeated. And even Karna had gone. Karna, in spite of what we were talking about, really was many times in battle, and so he ran away. And he kidnapped everyone, and they were humiliating him. Bhima, he was happy. He said, no, Gandharvas are going to hold it for us, so we don't have to fight. But Yudhishthira said, no, this is our family, so we can fight amongst ourselves, but if there's an outside attack, then we have to defend them. So he sent the others, the forerunners, to fight the Gandharvas. And Arjuna defeated them all. He brought Duryodhana all tied up, and Bhima made him say, I'm serving Yudhishthira, I'm serving Yudhishthira. But Yudhishthira let him go. And he wanted to give up being king, he was humiliated. But he was a partial incarnation of Kali. So they begged him, they needed him to carry out the work of Kali. So Kali fixed him. So he took back the position and forgot about him. And was just thinking he's a big man, everybody was honoring him. So better we try to follow in the footsteps of Rakuisha Pandit, chant, dance, spread the holy name, spread the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. This is, what we're here for. This is what Prabhupada came for, what Prabhupada gave from the very beginning. Prabhupada took it himself, took it sort of hard, chanted. And they had a Catholic stay life forever. And people like it. Everybody wants to stay alive forever. Maybe some people want to stay home. They want happiness, non-ending happiness. And we see it in so many different ways. Some people think it's just by marriage, having a nice family, by having a lot of money. Many people think forever is just this life. So if they have a lot of money, they can have a very nice retirement plan, and live forever. Or they have grandchildren, and they go and look at them, and they think, I've been through my grandchild, or my great-grandchild. They don't really understand. So, but by hearing the name of the Lord, by hearing the mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, 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 Hare. You wake up, come out from the darkness of ignorance. This is just like most people want to wake up with some kind of mind. They wake up, the soul can wake up and see himself as serving Krishna. And by the mercy of Prabhupada, we can learn how to serve Krishna. not only learning or not the body as a spiritual realization, but it's very incomplete. So there are, spiritual people who realize they're not the body, they give up gross body sense gratification. But they can stop every time they give nothing. And they just become nothing, nothing, depending on what kind of mind they are, emerging into oneness, which is the same. If you see the definition of oneness and nothingness, it's the same. But devotees go beyond that and serve in the spiritual world. Spiritual world is only seen in the walking and talking. Everything is described in Srimad Bhagavatam, or Srimad expression, in words. So, we just need to believe in it. There's one verse by Swami that I have no love for Krishna, nor do I have any attraction.
Anyone else? Word for word, or yeah. Kaha, who, inam, this, atra, here, upajuhava, called for, jimam, crooked, dasyaha, of a kept mistress, sutam, son, yat, whose, balina, by whose subsistence, eva, certainly, pushtaha, grown up, tasmin, unto him, pratipaha, enmity, parikrityaha, enemy's interest, aste, situated, nirvasyatam, get him out, ashu, immediately, purat, from the palace, Shvasanaha, let him breathe only. Translation. Who asked him to come here? This son of a kept mistress. He is so crooked that he spies in the interest of the enemy against those on whose support he has grown up. Toss him out of the palace immediately and leave him with only his breath. Responsibly. Who asked him to come here? This son of a kept mistress. He is so crooked that he spies in the interest of the enemy against those on whose support he has grown up. Toss him out of the palace immediately and leave him with only his breath. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. When getting married, the Kshatriya kings would take on several youthful girls along with the married princess. These girl attendants of the king were known as dasis, or attendant mistresses. By intimate association with the king, the dasis would get sons. Such sons were called dasi putras. They had no claim to a royal position, but they would get maintenance and other facilities just like princes. Vidura was the son of such a dasi, and he was thus not counted amongst the Kshatriyas. King Dhritarashtra was very affectionate toward his younger Dasiputra brother, Vidura. And Vidura was a great friend and philosophical advisor to Dhritarashtra. Duryodhana knew very well that Vidura was a great soul and well-wisher, but unfortunately he used strong words to hurt his innocent uncle. Duryodhana not only attacked Vidura's birth, but also called him an infidel because he seemed to support the cause of Yudhishthira, whom Duryodhana considered his enemy. He desired that Vidura be immediately put out of the palace and deprived of all his possessions. If possible, he would have liked him caned until he was left with nothing but his breath. He charged that Vidura was a spy of the Pandavas because he advised King Dhritarashtra in their favor, such is the situation of palace life and the intricacies of diplomacy, that even a faultless person like Vidura could be charged with something abominable and punished. Vidura was struck with wonder at such unexpected behavior from his nephew Duryodhana, and before anything actually happened, he decided to leave the palace for good. Translation again by Srila Prabhupada. Who asked him to come here? Who asked him to come here? This son of a kept mistress. He is so crooked that he spies in the interest of the enemy against those on whose support he has grown up. Toss him out of the palace immediately and leave him with only his breath. So this was Duryodhana's demonic way of treating Vidura. Vidura has a very interesting history. Before we go into that history, and it's not a fairy tale. It's an actual incident that's described in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But I wanted to read a section of a purport from the Adi Leela, chapter 17, text 7. This is what Prabhupada writes in the purport. According to Ayurvedic treatment, the entire physiological system is conducted by three elements, namely Vayu, Pitta, and Kapha, air, bile, and mucus. Open quote, air, bile, and mucus, close quote. Secretions within the body transform into other secretions like blood, urine, and stool. But if there are disturbances in the metabolism, the secretions turn into Kapha, open paren, mucus, end paren, by the influence of the air within the body. According to the Ayurvedic system, when the secretion of bile and formation of mucus disturb the air circulating within the body, 59 varieties of diseases may occur. One such disease is craziness. So Prabhupada goes on to explain that Lord Chaitanya said that he acted crazy because he had some dislocation or imbalance of the airs in the body. It's kind of interesting that even Ayurvedic science had a way of curing mental diseases by medicinal purposes. I saw a photograph in an article, someone is looking it up, in National Geographic a few years back, that looked like it was a man standing in a very large clay flower pot with sand, buried in sand up to his neck, and across his forehead was what they called in days of yore a poultice, a pack of some kind of medicine, and it was tied around so it would stay there, and it was made out of something that looked like bark. So it was a medical treatment to cure him of schizophrenia or some kind of bipolar disorder that he had. And it's also somewhat interesting that very, very difficult diseases to diagnose, diseases like migraine, for example, and I know what that is because I have it myself. It's a disease that no one knows where it comes from or how to cure it. People have even gone so far as to have surgery to cure this disease, and they've done a lot of things, but no one knows the actual cure for it. But this one devotee, who is presently the head of the Strategic Planning Commission, did cure it by using a psychosomatic cure, a type of meditation, which she claims has eradicated her migraine disease, which she has had for something like 30 years. She travels around with an injection kit of Imigran and takes it across the borders of various countries with the appropriate papers so that it passes. And she gives herself, she was giving herself an injection in the leg to stop the disease. But she found that without any use of drugs, it's actually possible to cure this disease. And she swears by this technique, which I hope try. And I would also highly recommend it for other sufferers of migraine, because it actually works. At least it's worked for her. So this Manduka Muni and Yamaraj and Vidura have a very interesting history. The history is narrated in the Bhagavatam. It so happened once upon a time, and again, this is not a fairy tale. I'm starting out, but it's as in a fairy tale. Manduka Muni, being a Muni and very liberal-minded, used to host, or he gave shelter to thieves and rogues. And it so happened that these thieves and rogues were discovered by the police, and they arrested all of them, including Manduka Muni, who was not really a thief, but he was giving shelter to thieves. So anyway, they were all going to be punished. And in those days, they had very severe means of punishment. There were dunking machines. There were shangas. They would throw people on upraised swords. They were very brutal methods of punishment. Of course, electric chairs and hanging is pretty brutal. Also, it asphyxiates the victims. But electric chairs and lethal injections are considered humane. Gas chambers are considered humane. But people have told me that, and guillotines, where they cut their head off and they're supposed to have an instant death. But Sariputta has told me that it's not really a painless death if they cut your head off, or if you go into a gas chamber or get the electric chair. But there's a lot of pain involved. That you don't die. In other words, as soon as your head is cut off, or as soon as your heart stops beating, or as soon as the lethal injection gets into all the vital organs. But it's a very painful process. So it seems to be very civil and very much progressive after the dunking machines and the chunga and other very brutal methods. And they used to impale people also. That is, they would send a sharpened rod up through the opening in their rectum, up into their mouth. So it would come out of the mouth or the upper part of the back. And they would display sometimes the people who got punished like this, so they would know not to do it. And they cut sometimes people's hands off, even arms were cut off. I think in even recent times there was the punishment of cutting hands off in Iran, but that was abolished when the new regime came into being. Anyway, these police arrested Manduka Muni along with all these rogues, and then Manduka Muni protested, and he went to Yamaraj to protest. He said that why are you punishing me so brutally? I mean, they were going to impale all these people and put up sticks up their rectum. And Manduka Muni cursed Yamaraj. He said, if you're going to impale me, that's just not proper, because I'm a Muni, and I've undergone great austerities to achieve what I have, and you're about to punish me. So he cursed Manduka Muni, cursed Yamaraj. He cursed him to take birth as a Shudra. And that Yamaraj became Vidura, according to what Prabhupada wrote in this purport in the first canto. And as it was said, he was the son of a Dasiputra, of a Dasi, so he became a Dasiputra, and he was the younger brother of Dhritarashtra. And it so happened that his advice to Dhritarashtra was always sanguine, was always good advice, because he was an ordinary person, Vidura. He was actually Yamaraj, and Yamaraj has a kind of a brain where he could read people's minds, very advanced brain. Like Lord Brahma and Lord Krishna, they're omniscient. They know what people are thinking. They're able to read people's minds. So Vidura was like that. But when he was asked, and he was also very tolerant, when he was asked to leave the palace, as is described in this verse, as Duryodhana asked him to depart immediately, and that he should be caned and tortured and left only with his breath, he took it as a blessing, and he left immediately. And that's why this section that was referred to in the Bhagavatam is called Vidura Leaves Home. And it said that he was a kind of a spy. He was kind of on the Pandava's side, even though he lived in the house of Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana sort of condemned him for spying on the very people who gave him his sustenance, who gave him shelter, who gave him food, and looked after him. So, Duryodhana is a very demonic sort of character, and this is why he said such evil things. So the mind is very powerful. It was the mind of Vidura was very powerful. He knew the mind of Dhritarashtra and how why Dhritarashtra caused this war because he was very attached to his sons. He wanted to continue to be the king. And Duryodhana is often referred to the king, or a prince, even though he wasn't yet. So the mind is very powerful. And one devotee named Dhruta wrote a lot about the power of the mind. Well, I once saw a film of a person who was able to break a piece of wood 50 by 100 centimeters or 2 by 4s or something like that with the flesh of his hand. And according to the slow motion picture, the wood started to break before his hand had even reached it. So this was the power of the mind. The martial arts instructor was teaching people how to concentrate the mind to such a degree that it could shatter or break a very strong piece of wood. So it just shows that how powerful the mind was. And there was a devotee, her name was Curie, Madame Curie, a Polish French physicist. I think she won a Nobel Prize, who had these seances in which she exhorted people to come forward from the dead, people who were disembodied, sort of like specters or what we would call ghosts. And these things were very conveniently relegated to the scrap heap of history, even though they were recorded, and she was a very famous physicist. There was a magazine in England called The Unexplained, which talked about things that were documented, unusual occurrences. Once it rained fishes. Fish rained down from the sky, and this is all documented. And there's another phenomenon called spontaneous internal combustion, where people just went on fire and disappeared, even at the altar as they were in a marriage ceremony. And there was nothing left but their shoes. All this is recorded, it's all documented, but it has been very conveniently sort of ignored. And now we think that everything is getting better. We have good communication, we have good travel, we have good medicine, and everything is improving. Things are always getting better, as the song said. Things are getting better. There was even a popular song called "Things Are Getting Better," but they're not getting better. And as Prabhupada wrote in the introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam, things seem to be getting better, but he said, as he wrote, there's a pinprick in society somewhere. So a pinprick is like a balloon, for example, looks very, very, very beautiful, and it's part of a celebration for having children. But if you prick it with a pin, it ceases to exist. It pops and it goes away. So there's a pinprick in society at large, and the pinprick is that people don't understand that there's life after death, that there's actually that the soul is eternal. They don't understand that. So things have become very conveniently relegated to the scrap heap of history, even though they are documented. And there are many documents. Sadhaputta wrote a book called Alien Identities, was the original name of it. It's called something else now. But it's documented that test pilots and many other people some were educated, some were not educated, had seen vehicles acting in a very strange way. They called them unidentified flying objects or flying saucers, where they could take off suddenly and move left and right, up and down, almost instantly. And this has all been very carefully documented and recorded. Such things and beings on these have been recorded. There was even a television series called Taken, and it was there was a group therapy session. This was it was recorded. This is a documentary sort of thing. It was actually, I think, a drama, but it was based on fact. And the documentary was people who had been abducted by beings from supposedly other planets. And they were, subjected to some very strange things. And they actually had lost their memory of what had happened. So they had to have a group therapy session to compare their notes and somehow or other get back to normal. But all this was carefully recorded, and it was all documented, that they were taken by, that was the name of the series, taken by these people from other planets and experimented upon. And this has occurred all over the world, not only in the United States, in Pennsylvania and places like that, but in France and in various European countries and in Russia. There are many examples that have been documented of identified flying objects and unidentified flying objects and unidentified people. So they do exist, and they're very powerful. There's another science called psychic surgery, and there's a film I saw of a psychic surgeon removing a goiter, that's a growth, from a woman's throat without using any kind of anesthesia or any kind of general anesthesia or local anesthesia. And according to the picture, he just does an incision without using any kind of instruments on the throat, and it's all done outside on a sort of a gurney or a sort of a what do they call those things, like you push people on? Yeah, like a trolley. Anyway, and he takes out this goiter, and then he this psychic surgeon I think he was from the Philippines, closed up the opening in her throat, and shortly after that she awakens, and she felt no pain at all. She just it was all done while she was totally conscious. So this method was poo-pooed by the British Medical Association, who thought that people shouldn't sort of opt for alternative methods of curing or surgery. And what they did was, they showed in a film, I didn't see this film, but I was told on good authority that there was a film where they made it look like the psychic surgeons were using a sleight of hand technique. They were taking growths out of people, out of growths. They were actually pigs' entrails that were removed. So these pharmaceutical industries and their associations like the American Medical Association, British Medical Association, they're very much able to discredit or deprecate any alternative methods of therapy, whether they're done with the mind or some kind of psychosis, psychic methods. They're very much opposed to it because they're making very big money by producing pharmaceuticals. And I'm not saying that all pharmaceuticals are evil or bad, but most of them are. I take some of them myself. I take them for migraine headaches. And I'm very happy that Smith Beecham Klein spent billions of dollars and something like 30 years to develop a drug that at least takes away the symptoms of a very painful experience. And I just wanted to say that I'm in a great deal of pain right at the moment, so this talk may be a little bit incoherent and discursive, but that's the reason. Anyways, if there are anyone wants to ask anything about anything, I'll read the verse again. Who asked him to come here, this son of a kept mistress? He is so crooked that he spies in the interest of the enemy against those on whose support he has grown up. Toss him out of the palace immediately and leave him with only his breath. Sometimes it is questioned why Bhishma Dev, while Draupadi was being insulted and disrobed publicly in a meeting, why he didn't do anything to protest. He's one of the 12 Mahajans. He's a very important person. And Prabhupada gave one answer, saying that because he was supported, he was given shelter, and he was given food by the Kuru dynasty, that he didn't speak up or do anything because he was being very diplomatic, which was part of his expertise. So there are many instances of this, and this is happening with Duryodhana, who's very vociferous and asking Vidura to leave the palace immediately, and describes him as being not truly a Brahmin like the rest of the Kurus or Kshatriyas, but the son of a kept mistress, as it's explained in the purport here. There were these dasis who were kept like maidservants, and sometimes they had sons, and the sons were allowed to live in the palace, and they were given food and shelter and so on and so forth. So that's the story of Vidura, and it was not until he was speaking with Maitreya that all this history of his who he really was came out, and the power of his mind. Sometimes Krishna is said to be, which he is, omniscient. but he's not omniscient like some gurus or high demigods who are very powerful, and people like Durvasa Muni, who could travel, throughout outer space for millions of years, which he did when he was condemned by Maharaj Ambarish. Some of them are very powerful, but they're not omniscient in the sense that Krishna is totally omniscient. Like Krishna knows, for example, how many hairs, or in my case, hair follicles, we have on our heads. But no one else knows. No one else can say. Maybe Lord Brahma or Yamaraj knows a little bit more, but none of them are omniscient like Krishna is omniscient, knows every single thing in every part of the universe, everything that's going on, and what our constitutions are, what we're thinking at every moment. That is true omniscience. And the omniscience that is sometimes ascribed to, one of his books, Purnachandra, talked about blind acceptance of authority, and blind rejection of authority. And he says that blind rejection of authority is more popular nowadays than blind acceptance of authority, which is probably true. But anyway, this blind acceptance of authority is sometimes found when people think that their spiritual leader, Shiksha or Diksha, is omniscient, knows everything. And everything that he says is always true and always correct and always perfect at all times and all places. One of, I guess, my pet peeves is people who lift a sentence out of something Prabhupada said in a purport or in a lecture, and purport that it is always true at all times and all places for all people, which is not what Prabhupada meant. And unless one carefully researches what Prabhupada's said in many different places on a particular subject, it's sort of intellectually dishonest to lift something out that's out of its context and say that it's always true in all places and all times. But that goes on. It's one of the symptoms of blind acceptance of authority. They think, well, Prabhupada's an authority, so he said this, Prabhupada said that, and so it's always true at all times and all places. So I see some heads nodding that that's a universally acceptable thing, even though it's being recorded and all over the world. I think everyone will agree to it. So if there are any comments or questions on any of this, I'll just read the verse once again. Who asked him to come here, the son of a kept mistress? This is again Duryodona's condemnation of Vidura, formerly Yamaraj, in a previous life. He is so crooked that he spies in the interest of the enemy against those on whose support he has grown up. Toss him out of the palace immediately and leave him with only his breath. He was such an expert diplomat that he made it sound as if Vidura was in the wrong, that he was born of a dasi, that he was being maintained by the Kurus, and yet he was a spy. He was spying for the Kuru's enemies. So a person who is very careful, and Duryodhana was a very careful administrator and very expert at diplomacy, could make things sound like they might be right, even when they're totally wrong. That's diplomacy. Or one definition of a diplomat is a person who can tell you to go to hell, and so that you look forward to the journey. Anyway, I'll close with that little joke. If there's anyone that wants to ask anything or say anything. Yes, Krishna Rupa? The microphone. I want you to be aware that whatever you're saying is going to be heard all across the world. And there are people who are going to make it look like you're wrong.
That wouldn't be hard.
Pardon?
In my case, that wouldn't be hard.
Well, it's not hard in any case. Anyway, I don't know if you're going to be able to get a microphone, but you can speak anyway.
Anyway, I was just going to make a couple of comments. Thank you very much, Maharaj, for the lovely class. You said in the beginning of the class something about yoga and how it can cure different, and Ayurveda can cure different diseases quite effectively. Now, I'm very sorry to hear that you have a migraine at the moment. But I was reading, I have to consult my notes to find out specifically whether it was in Bhagavatam or the Gita, that there's an interesting report that Prabhupada wrote about Hatha Yoga, he said Hatha Yoga, if performed every day, can actually prevent pretty much any disease. And then in the next sentence, he said that Hatha Yoga, certain asanas, is also very beneficial for people with mental health issues. I mean, he didn't use the term mental health issues, but those with mental conditions, because it can balance the life is. And when I read that, I found it very interesting, because Prabhupada often didn't encourage us to do asanas or anything like that.
I don't know where exactly it's said, but it's obvious that the Hatha Yoga has become very popular, partly because it's a cure for many diseases. There was a demonstration by a guy named Iyengar, an Indian man, Iyengar, and somewhere in Bombay, and he was an elderly person. He was in his 60s or 70s, and he gave a demonstration that kind of, because of his vitality and his old age, it kind of indirectly indicated that the power of yoga to bring people to a very vital position, even though they're very aged, and the ravages of age can be sort of discounted. So it's a very, very popular and very useful. In fact, I used to practice it myself, Hatha Yoga. I had a book by Swami Vishnu Devananda, and it had pictures of him doing all sorts of strange, unusual poses, and I found that they were very helpful. And I think that I've lived to the age of 80 without any serious or terminal diseases, partly because I practice Hatha Yoga so carefully.
What made you stop that?
I just kind of got bored. But I should have kept on. I mean, I know people that are my age that still are practicing it, and it's for health reasons, and it's very good.
Thank you, Mum. I did have something else to say, but I'm not going to say it because it might be seen as controversial.
Well, you can speak with me after class, and we can talk about it when it's not being recorded. Yeah, I think Krishna Kirtan, you had something to say?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I'm just wondering, like, in the Bhagavad Gita, we have Bharat Maharaj takes birth as a deity, and he's got that full memory. In the case of Vidura being Yamaraj, do we know it? Like, has he got access to, does he know he's Yamaraj, or is he a completely different personality, Vidura? Because we tend to speak to him, speak about him as being Yamaraj, a great soul. So does he take on a completely different personality if he gets his Yamaraj, or is he Yamaraj inside a body of Vidura?
Well, my imperfect understanding is that when someone is incarnated, he gets another body, he or she, and getting another body also means getting another mind. So in other words, he doesn't necessarily have all the facilities that Yamaraj had. Like, he could read minds, and he could carefully record everything that was going on by everybody. He could mete out punishment, he could, if necessary. But according to what I understand, or what I know, as soon as one incarnates, he doesn't necessarily take on all the qualities of the person he is, he was in a previous life.
And he seems to have his greatness and spiritual prowess. No?
Very great in spiritual prowess. Obviously, he was a spiritual consultant to Dhritarashtra, to the point where he got him to leave the palace with him and to renounce his kingdom, which was a very, very difficult thing for Dhritarashtra to do, because he was very attached to being the king and having his sons be the king of his dynasty. But Vidura had some spiritual realization. He was able to convince his older brother what to do. So he was very much respected, even though he may not have had all the facilities of Yamaraj. And even though he was low-born, I think Prabhupada has written in several places that doesn't matter where you're born, or whether you're black, white, male, female, young or old, or whatever. If you know the science of Krishna, then you're fully qualified as a Brahminical person. You can give initiation, you can do all things that Brahmins customarily do. Anyways, anything else? So, Krishna Rupa, should we have a little sort of private discussion? Okay. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. It's a nice picture of Krishna dancing on Kaliya on the cover of this book. It's a very wonderful pastime. And we know that Kaliya became a great devotee after this incident, because he not only were his wife's protesting,